you are a broadcast meteorologist. You are a storm chaser. You ran up on a tornado on Monday. So tell me a little bit about storm chasing and what you do when you're getting ready to walk out the door and do some storm chasing. How do you prepare?
Yeah, sure. The process of storm chasing for me usually starts several days in advance. I knew I was planning on chasing that Monday, probably the Friday before. We're kind of looking at some of the potential, even though it was a very low end severe weather day, there is that potential. And especially this time of year, anytime there's a chance in January, I'm going to be taking that chance to get out there and chase. Usually it goes several days in advance, kind of slowly narrowing down the target area, usually from like a regional level to a state level, then slowly down to a little bit more of maybe a somewhat county sized area, trying to target a specific area. Then the day of, we're trying to go out there, get onto the best storm of the day. Sometimes there are multiple, so it's kind of the fun of picking the right one, not getting suckered into the first storm of the day when the best storm may be the second or third storm of the day and something like that. So it really is kind of a game, really, throughout the day of kind of using your best meteorological practices and meteorological knowledge of finding the best place to be, looking at the environment. Also a bit of luck as well, because things like road construction can really slow you down and things like that. And of course, sometimes when you think something will happen, it doesn't. So it's a little bit of luck to kind of get in the right place as well.
Yeah, you're a meteorologist, but not all storm chasers are meteorologists, right? So do you feel like you have a heads up because you're looking at this days in advance and you really know what's going on?
Yes and no. I'd say a lot of storm chasers, even though they might not be meteorologists, degree meteorologists, or even working as a job as meteorologists, they all look at severe weather usually for years and years and years. So they all generally have that same kind of knowledge. I will say that sometimes the little nuances, especially locally, when you work in the same area for, many, many years, you get a bit of nuances in the models of which model may be performing a little bit better than another model. That kind of extra knowledge, I think having, the full meteorology degree might be helpful. But really, any storm chaser that's been doing it for, a decade or more, they have the same level of experience of kind of dealing with the severe weather threat.
So is it like Twister? Are you guys competitive out there? Are you slashing tires to get ahead?
No, honestly, it's quite the opposite than the movie Twister. A lot of times it's, you meet out in these really random areas in the middle of nowhere, especially like May and June. You could be in middle of nowhere you could be in the middle of nowhere Kansas or Nebraska, and you see somebody you haven't seen in 3 or 4 years. It's a really camaraderie kind of thing. It's a lot of friendship you build through storm chasing and things like that. Usually, days in advance, if you're thinking about targeting the same area, you're kind of messaging back and forth on different messaging apps and things like, oh, let's catch lunch before this happens and all of that. Maybe not sharing so much detail and so much of the exactly where you're going to go kind of thing, but you might as well kind of hang out with some of your friends while you're out there.
What kind of equipment do you need?
When I used to storm chase many, many years ago, it was a lot more complicated. It was a lot of computers and all these kind of things. Now, honestly, I like to be a lot more simple. I like just chasing with the phone or even maybe just a small tablet or small laptop. I will say, though, this year I started chasing with a new internet service, SpaceX Starlink internet service, which will really help me get internet in very remote areas. When you're chasing in very rural areas, maybe South Dakota or Kansas, you can't rely on your smartphone having internet service. And that internet service is so important for things like radar and just kind of seeing what the atmosphere is doing, not only where you are, but maybe 2 or 3 counties away where maybe you probably should be going that direction. So if you have internet wherever you want to be, that's where satellite internet can come into play. And of course, just a video camera if you want to capture all that kind of thing. Some people don't really care about remembering everything, so a smartphone camera is good enough. I like to try and keep some video better resolution, so I like to kind of keep a good camcorder with me as well.
All right, so let's talk specifics. Monday.
Sure.
Take me through the process of how you wound up where you did. I love your reaction, for one. That was very honest, great reaction. So tell me how the day planned out.
Yeah, sure. On Monday, it was really a test of my new internet service and things like that. So I wasn't expecting anything like that. And when I crested that hill for the first time, it was like, oh, so this that's how today is going to go. Okay. So earlier that day, I kind of had a general idea I wanted to be down towards about I-80. One thing when it comes to storm chasing is you really want to keep your road options open, east, west, north, south. So Williamsburg in southeastern Iowa is a pretty good spot. You got the great I-80 to go east and west, a good north and south highway. So I figured that'd be a pretty good spot to kind of set up earlier in the afternoon. We also were watching sunshine coming in from southeastern Iowa. We knew that this severe weather day was going to be so dependent on two things: any little bit of sunshine and dew points reaching back near 50. If you can get those two things, the potential was there for a strong storm. And watching how things were progressing just off to my south, down into Washington, Iowa, dew points were reaching back into the low 50s. So it would seem that the dew point and the moisture levels were getting to where they would need to be, pretty close to where I was. And then looking at the satellite imagery, pretty good punch of dry air arriving. There was certainly some sunshine where I was, and I felt pretty good about where I was in Williamsburg. Then I decided to get kind of antsy. I went kind of east about 10, 15 miles. And then the storm popped up right where I was. I went back west 10 to 15 miles. And that's when I saw the tornado that developed on Martin Luther King Day back on January 16th. The first tornado to occur in January since 1967. Just a wild event, and the earliest tornado in a calendar year. You want to go out and you go out and expect and kind of hope maybe something happens, but on a day like that, you really weren't. At best, you might see a thunderstorm. That day definitely exceeded some expectations, even though we were warning the public ahead of time about the potential of a tornado or two. And well, we got the tornado or two.
All right, I want to talk about kind of the dangers of this. I mean, people have been hurt and even killed in the past storm chasing. Tell me, are you often in danger? Have you been in danger? And how does your family feel about this career of yours?
When it comes to storm chasing, I would say the biggest hazard is not the weather. The weather can be somewhat predictable, mostly. Lightning is probably the one thing that I fear the most when storm chasing. It's not the weather that's the problem, it's the driving. When you're driving sometimes long hours to some remote location, there's a lot of hazards there on any given day. But you add in long nighttime travel, you have instances of deer crossing highways, you have possible, drunk drivers late at night. Driving is by far the worst part of storm chasing. And that's not even usually right when you're in the severe weather threat itself. But the weather itself, it could be somewhat predictable. I mean, when you use your knowledge of what weather is going to be doing, you have all the radar products to see where the storm is going. The weather itself, not as much of a threat, except for lightning. Again, lightning is the one thing that I definitely fear. When I started storm chasing, I was senior in high school, pretty much at that point. And my parents were questioning why I was doing what I was doing. But, they trusted me to kind of do what I do. I will say that as years have gone by, they kind of just say, just let me know when you get home. Don't tell me that you're going out there. Just tell me when you get home kind of thing. So that's kind of how that's kind of developed over the years.